Welcome to another Arkansas Adventure Ride with your fellow rider lawman. Before we begin our ride, I want to tell you about a handy little book called the Arkansas Motorcycle Guide. It contains a lot of interesting routes for motorcycle riding in Arkansas. You can pick up the book for free in most Arkansas visitor centers, or you can view or download it online. This video is titled Camden Campaign Route, and it follows the route of the same name in the book. The route is in the southeast Arkansas and takes you through some historical areas and towns. This ride took place in September 2019 and included my uncle on his Honda Goldwing, my son on his KLR 650, and I rode my Africa Twin. Our ride begins at Henderson State University. Just beyond the university, we enter the historic downtown of Arkadelphia.
That's 67 right there, that one block.
Yeah, I was recording. Come through here to get downtown on the camera.
Oh, okay.
It's that way, right?
That's south right here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, turn.
We are now coming up on the Clark County Courthouse. The Clark County Courthouse at 4th and Clay Streets in Arkadelphia was constructed in 1899 to replace an aging structure built in the 1840s. Except for a time when the building was closed for repair and restoration following damage from a tornado in 1997, the courthouse has operated continuously as the center of Clark County's government. As one of the state's oldest courthouses that is still serving the purpose for which it was constructed, the Clark County Courthouse was added to the National Register of Historic Places on December 1st, 1978. The storage structure at 4th and Clay Streets was built by R.S. O'Neill from a Charles Thompson design. At the time of its construction, the Clark County Courthouse was arguably the county's most impressive structure. The large brick Romanesque-style building dominated the area surrounding it. A 6-story conical clock tower gave the courthouse a distinctive appearance. The courthouse's entrance each have an arched porch. Terracotta tablets above the arches displayed the building's name and date of construction. Surrounding the courthouse features several items of historic interest, including a 1911 Confederate monument, also on the National Register of Historic Places, a Veterans Memorial, a salt kettle, a boulder from the construction of the Gray Dam, and other historical markers.
Sure does, doesn't it? Huh. Yeah. One of 4 kettles used in production on salt on the Saline Bayou, 1 mile east of Arkadelphia, 1814. Yeah, it's something to do with salt.
Production of salt on the Saline Bayou.
The Missouri Pacific Railroad constructed a railroad depot in Arkadelphia around 1917, after the company acquired the St. Louis, Iron Mountain, and Southern Line. The depot's construction was a part of the Missouri Pacific's campaign to establish a corporate identity through the use of the Italianate Mediterranean style of architecture for its passenger and freight depots. The structure was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1992. The station is still used by Amtrak, and it serves as a stop for the Texas Eagle. We are now entering the town of Prescott, the county seat of Nevada County in southwest Arkansas. It is also the largest city in the county. Originating as a railroad town, it remains a vital link on the land route between Little Rock and Texarkana, as well as a local center of business and agriculture. An important Civil War skirmish was fought near the site of Prescott at Prairie de Anne on April the 10th and 11th, 1864, as part of the Camden Expedition. The railroad line crossed the north end of Nevada County, that section being built in 1873. Robert Burns moved from Little Rock to the town of Moscow, 2 miles south of the tracks, and he persuaded the railroad surveyors to plant a town on the line near Moscow. In August, 4 surveyors, including W.H. Prescott, laid out 24 blocks on each side of the rails, and within 2 weeks Burns had constructed a frame storehouse in the incipient city. A second store, a restaurant, and a hotel quickly followed, and the railroad had established a depot in the city by November. On November 24th of the same year, Prescott received a post office, Burns was named postmaster, and was said by later writers to resemble an oil boom town in the speed of its growth. Controversy exists surrounding the name of the town. Most historians assume that it was named for the surveyor, but others note that railroad executives Thomas Allen and Henry Marquand had a friend of the same name for whom the city might have been named. We are now entering Courthouse Square. In 1884, a 2-story county courthouse was built in Prescott on this site. This structure was razed in 1911, and the second courthouse was built to replace it. It was completed in 1912 and was designed in the Classical Revival style. It was demolished in 1864, and the current courthouse was built at that time. In August 1911, a white man about 40 years old was found dead in the city park. The remains were brought to Prescott Hardware, and the coroner was notified and a jury selected. The people examined the body to determine the deceased's identity. There was no identification on his person, but people reported seeing him in Little Rock, Gurdon, and Arkadelphia in the recent past. He was also seen in Prescott City Park the night before attending church. He was a cripple and used 2 crutches and apparently made his living by selling lead pencils, as there were several in his pocket. However, the man was not destitute, for he had 2 gold teeth. The jury decided that he had died of heart failure. The body was embalmed by Undertaker J.D. Cornish and was to be held at the store for a few days in hopes that someone would identify and claim the body. However, no one ever identified the corpse of Old Mike as he became known. His body was on display until the 1970s. Finally, in 1975, Old Mike was buried in D.N. Cemetery because a state law prohibited the display of human remains for public view. The funeral home purchased a burial plot for him, and his tombstone reads, Old Mike died August 21st, 1911. We will now take a slight detour from our route to check out White Oak Lake State Park, which is a few miles from Bluff City. The reservoir sits surrounded by tall pine trees, giving it a rich wooded beauty. The state park offers camping facilities, hiking and mountain biking trails, boat and bicycle rentals, as well as playground facilities. Because White Oak Lake was created in a woodland area, the lake features many submerged dead trees. These serve as excellent cover for bass, crappie, and brim, all of which are reasonably abundant in the lake. Catfish also thrive at the lake. The park features hiking trails of easy to moderate difficulty, of which the Beach Ridge and Silver Maples trails give a good understanding of the West Gulf coastal plain forest setting. Deer and heron sightings are common at the park, while some bald eagles winter there. White Oak Lake is reasonably popular with local residents, but its location in a part of Arkansas with few tourists keeps it from undue crowding or traffic. White Oak Lake is near the Poison Springs Battleground State Park, a Civil War battlefield. Completed in 1961, the lake is 19 miles southeast of Prescott and 15 miles northwest of Camden, off State Highway 387 and 24. It is the second largest lake created by the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission at 1,656 acres. now proceed to Poison Springs Battlefield State Park. In the first few months of the Civil War, the North discovered that it was faced with a serious cotton shortage. No longer could cotton be purchased from the southern states, and hungry textile mills of the North needed cotton in order to produce. Union politicians, civilian interest groups, and the military decided that if the state of Texas could be occupied by Union forces, they could grow cotton to supply the empty mills of the North. A plan was drawn. Major General Nathaniel Banks was to sail from New York and enter the Red River in Louisiana and join a Union force marching south from Little Rock. Together, the two columns would invade Texas and secure the area for the North. The plan was to be called the Red River Expedition. It was not until 1864, however, that the plan was put into effect. In September of 1863, Major General Frederick Steele with 20,000 men had advanced from Helena and captured Little Rock. The Arkansas state government fled to the southern part of the state, settling in Hempstead County Courthouse at Washington, Arkansas. On March the 23rd, 1864, General Steele left Little Rock to join General Banks in the Red River region of Louisiana and begin the invasion of Texas. Steele followed a route which roughly parallels today's Interstate 30. His Union forces crossed the Washita River at Rockport, near where the interstate crosses the river at Malvern, and continued southwest towards Texas. Steele's army first encountered heavy resistance at the crossing of the Little Missouri River, where a bloody affair took place between Steele's leading division and 3,000 Confederate dismounted cavalry. Further south on Prairie du Anne near Prescott, the entire Confederate force dug in. A day and a half of hard fighting was needed to dislodge the outnumbered rebels. The fighting at Prairie du Anne slowed Steele, and spring rains had begun. The dirt road turned into a quagmire. After 2 weeks of marching, Steele had covered only 70 miles, and Confederate resistance was strengthening, particularly around Washington, the Confederate state capital. General Steele decided to alter his plans and turn east towards Camden instead of proceeding directly to Shreveport. His army camped at White Oak Creek, 18 miles west of Camden, on the night of the 12th. Then, after a 2-hour skirmish, marched towards Camden. The Federals entered the city with little difficulty on April the 13th, 1864. The Battle of Poison Springs. Steele's army included some 13,000 men, 9,000 horses and mules, 800 wagons, and 30 pieces of artillery. Supplying this army was proving to be a major problem. Steele later wrote that his supplies were nearly exhausted, and so was the country. With men on half rations for almost 3 weeks, it was almost impossible to enforce the commander's orders against unauthorized foraging. On April the 17th, a train of 198 wagons was sent westward along the Upper Washington Road to collect corn and other foodstuff. After loading the wagons with corn, they camped 18 miles west of Camden. At sunup, they began the march to Camden. Soon they received reinforcements, bringing the total forces to 875 infantry, including the 1st Kansas Colored, 90 cavalry troopers, and a 4-gun battery of artillery, including 2 mountain howitzers and 2 rifled cannons. The Confederates, observing this movement, gathered some 3,100 cavalry and 8 cannon under Brigadier Generals Samuel B. Maxey and John S. Marmaduke. The enemy was met about 14 miles west of Camden at a place known as Poison Springs. The Confederates under Maxey blocked the Union advance, and together he and Marmaduke attacked the front and south flank of the long forged train. Several times the Federals tried to make a stand, only to be pushed back beyond the stalled train. After a fierce battle, including a furious charge by a regiment of Confederate Choctaw Indians, the Federals broke en route and were pursued for about 2 miles. The train was stalled along present-day Highway 79 on the south side of the state park. Fighting took place along both sides of the road. The Confederates captured the 4 cannon, complete with limbers and caissons, 170 wagons, and teams took over 100 prisoners and buried 181 Federal troops. According to a Southern officer, the wagons contained corn, bacon, stolen bed quilts, women's and children's clothing, hogs, geese, and all the extras of unscrupulous plunder. 301 Union soldiers were listed as killed or missing. Additionally, The loss created much indignation in the Union camp as well as aggravating the critical supply situation. Confederate losses were relatively small, with 111 killed, wounded, or missing. The victory at Poison Springs, along with the arrival of General E. Kirby Smith with 3 infantry divisions, and the report of the defeat of Union General Banks in Louisiana, raised Confederate hopes that they could cut off the supply lines and capture the entire Union Army. Part 2 will be coming soon. Thank you for watching.